We got a fine show in front of us, right? We got a butane torch right there.
Yep.
Hey, people in digital land.
And we're drinking some whiskey.
So we're gonna continue kind of the parenting topics. We're gonna try and continue the smoking of the cigar. It is now February, so I'm gonna be enjoying some whiskey. As in previous episodes, I was not. It was a rough January. And
I had to drink twice as much to make up for it.
that's true. That's why some of your emails.
Sacrifice.
That's why some of your emails were a little incoherent.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little angry at me too. So, let's rock and roll. We are the Old Fashioned Dad podcast, seeking to love dads and men through the person and work of Jesus Christ, while entering into tough conversations on marriage, mental health, sex, and parenting, all while sipping good whiskey. All right. So,
All right, we're back.
We are back.
Back from our intro.
Here we go.
What are we talking about today? No, what are we drinking today?
Oh, yeah,
Important
you know
stuff.
what? Let me, I feel like I gotta, before I can officially talk about what we're drinking, I feel like I have to smoke a little bit. Oh man, this thing's ready to rock and roll.
That's tasty.
Oh, buddy.
I like that. What are we smoking here? So I got a sampler pack from Thompson Cigar Company. Dominican. Yeah, I'm not sure which one this is.
Hello, that's nice.
It's good.
That's nice. Kind of medium body.
Yeah.
Medium. Can I say that? Can I say that about the cigar? Will it get offended if I say medium body? It won't get offended, will it?
No, I think it'd be fine.
Okay. I just want to check and make sure. All right. You think all our listeners are bored yet?
Yeah, it's a little rambly on the intro.
On our end?
So much
Yeah.
for making these short and concise.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
We're
today?
making the intro short and concise. The rest of it's going to be really bad.
Yeah.
Okay, whiskey, right?
Yeah, what
Should
are we
we talk
drinking?
about the whiskey? So we are drinking a little baby bottle. Was sent to me from Colorado, from Branch and Barrel. Branch and Barrel. I honestly don't know how long this has been aged. My guess, based off of taste, it's going to be kind of in the 2 to 3 year range.
Is that off a taste or off of you reading the label?
Definitely not on the label. I was hoping that as I was reading this, I'd look really intelligent and it would eventually...
What are these numbers down here?
Batch 11, 90 proof.
Oh, yes.
And
Batch
then
11. That's a
the
good
master distiller's name, which I can't even make out. So, distilled, aged, and bottled by Branch and Barrel Distilling, Colorado. So, why don't we take a sip?
Let's do it.
See what's there.
Let's do it.
Cheers. Do we cheers?
Cheers.
Cheers.
Kind of a fruity front end. Is that what I'm detecting?
Yeah. I get a little bit of charcoal on the back end.
Okay.
Now, it could be the cigar
Could be.
combination. So, interesting. I like the whiskey. I think I might prefer it a little bit more if it was maybe aged another 6 months, maybe another year.
Yeah, I'd age it like 7 months.
7.
Yeah.
7. Why don't we just do 7.5? I wouldn't also mind if it was aged in a port barrel.
Oh, yeah. Add a little sweetness to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Port barrel.
Okay.
So, well, thanks for joining in to the old YouTubes, the old Facebooks, the old Instagrams. We are back.
And the old podcasts.
The old podcasts.
Yeah.
The old podcasts.
Still called a podcast.
Is it a podcast?
Yeah.
Instagram podcast. I thought it would be kind of a cool topic today, since we've been covering a few more practical issues with parenting, is talk about kids and screens.
Screens.
That's not an issue you deal with, right? Because it's
actually,
certainly an issue that I deal with.
I deal with the kid and screen.
So not multiple kids and screens.
No. I have one kid with multiple screens.
Now, for all those parents that are listening that are like 20 years old, you and I grew up in an age where screens just weren't really a normal part of life.
Well, there's TV screen. That was the thing. It was going to rot your brain, and violent video games were going to, too much Super Mario.
Right. If you look back on the video games of yesteryear, is that a yesteryear? I don't know where I'm coming up with
Stop
that.
trying to sound smart. Just use regular vocabulary.
When we were growing up, it was Mario. It wasn't like violent.
Sure.
You look at video games nowadays, you're like, I could have nightmares from that.
Sure, you could learn how to be an assassin playing one of these video games.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so prior to coronavirus, that's still a thing, right?
As of this recording,
All right. Well,
even though we did slip into phase 2, whatever that means, today.
yeah, King County, everybody, as of today, is into phase 2, where dining rooms, both personal and professional, can be now open. 25%
Yep.
capacity.
Whatever.
At any rate.
Anyway.
So, prior to coronavirus, one of the main issues that I would encounter a lot in my counseling office is kids and screen time and how to navigate that.
Mm-hmm.
And there were always inevitably a lot of issues that would arise from kids having, I guess, too much screen time or too much for them screen time, but there was always an issue around that.
Okay.
And now that coronavirus is here and everybody is operating...
No one cares.
yeah. Everything is digital. Just everything is all screen all the time. And I do kind of wonder, if and when life returns to some semblance of normal from back before coronavirus, if kids will be like, I really don't want to be on screens. I'm actually saturated. I think I've had enough. It's just speculation. But I'm kind of curious your thoughts on kids and screens. You have a kid. Do you guys struggle with your kiddo and screen time? Or is it pretty dialed in for you guys?
I don't know if I'd say struggled. I mean, we've got pretty well-defined guidelines around it. During the week, we don't do screen time. But, we're also fortunate where our son's going to school in person because he goes to a small, private school that it's been able to do that. Oh, that's fun. They got some warmth coming off of that.
That was nice. Woo.
But I mean, if he had his way, he would either play Minecraft 24/7 or watch kids YouTube or Netflix on his
Is
iPad
Minecraft his game?
Yeah, he likes Minecraft.
Yeah.
We've like I'm not a big gamer, never have been, and so I'm fine keeping it that way. I mean he knows from friends at school that there's this there's the Xbox and stuff that has way more advanced Minecraft on it.
Right.
And he's done like some virtual like birthday party with a friend, and they're all playing some virtual game on the computer, which he was super frustrated because
is it called Roblox by chance?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez.
And he was the only one that didn't really know how to play, so he was frustrated. But,
Good. He shouldn't learn how to play it. It's a bad game.
yeah. So I mean, I'm a big believer in just keeping it to a minimal, and mostly because it adversely affects his personality, his attitude when he gets too much screen time.
So you've noticed when he's
Yes.
overstimulated from screen time that impacts behavior?
Yeah. I mean, in general, I don't have as much of a problem with something like Minecraft because I mean he's very spatially advanced for his age.
Right.
And so he gets super excited when you bring home like a value pack of Scotch tape, because he'll rummage through recycling and just build like city structures to scale.
He's gonna be an architect, isn't he?
That or something, or a demolition guy, because he likes building it and then destroying it. But he's 9 years old, so I mean, Minecraft, we don't let him do any of the joint, game stuff. So he's just playing in his own world, building stuff. And so I generally don't have a problem with that, but he'll build like these mansions with like rooftop decks and pools and lounge chairs and like a grill and.
Sounds very elaborate.
Yeah, it's pretty detailed. So he'll figure
Does
out.
he like invite you in? Like, hey, Dad, come take a look at this.
Yeah. He always wants to show us afterwards and stuff. So I mean, I don't mind encouraging that, but there's I think a certain something about just the medium of. Being from a screen, whether it's a phone or an iPad, that's generally not good. Especially for a kid who has ADHD, who's already overstimulated just with his surroundings. I don't know. I've seen the thing, and then I'm also very skeptical. Just of the medium. Even with everyone going digital, with school districts giving out Chromebooks and everything.
Right.
I mean, just the nature of the learning being via video versus text or textbook, like it develops a kid's brain differently
Right.
than our brains were developed being, and everyone before us for 500 years,
Right.
when they had, pretty much from the printing press on up until 10 years ago, the primary way of learning was books.
Yeah.
It was text,
Oral, verbal, in person.
Right. And
Yeah.
that is a different part of your brain that develops to process, linear thought, reason, logic, as opposed to video, which is a different part of your brain that processes emotions and feelings and that sort of thing. So I mean, it's developing a kid's brain differently, even if they're learning the same subject matter.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So have you? I'm curious. I mean, I have all my thoughts, but I'm glad I have all my thoughts.
I'm losing my thoughts.
Have you? Do you encounter some of the the thinking like, hey, if my kid is on screens too long, he's going to end up being like, I don't know, dumb or non-productive member of society, won't be able to achieve. Those are things that I would kind of encounter in counseling. Like parents would be just so worried, about their kids and screen time. Yet they would never do anything about I always found it really amazing that they'd be so concerned about the amount of screen time that their children would have, yet they are the ones in the first place that gave their kids a screen.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I always find that kind of ironic. When I hear that, I'm like, you're the parent. They didn't go out and buy their own iPad.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's a little hypocritical to be like, I'm concerned about the screen time, but they're parenting, I'm making an assumption here. They're parenting by, little Johnny wants to use his screen, so here you go. Or you just give him free access, which I'm amazed how many parents, it seems, have no connection or are technologically or internet illiterate and don't realize.
Yeah, that blows me away. That blows me away.
Maybe you should control when and where and what they can access on their, on their screens.
Right. Yeah. I think it's actually, on that note, I think it's quite a bit more dangerous to give an adolescent, and when I say adolescent, I mean like 10 and on.
Sure.
Or at least 10 to 13. That they're given a phone.
Yeah. I told our kid he's not getting one until he's 18.
Yeah. I told my daughter's 30.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, maybe 15 or 16, but there's still going to be some, heavy parental controls on that. So, I mean, like Nolan has a friend who comes over, and he's 10, he's a year older than Nolan. Comes over and has a phone, and the reason that I always hear from parents is like, well, I got to be able to get a hold of them. It's for safety. Yeah. And I'm like, where they're going, get the number of the parent. If they're just roaming the neighborhood, well, maybe you need parent better. Now, granted, that is
Look
also
at you just calling out parents.
Well, that is also.
I like that.
I mean, that's also a cultural shift. Like was when I was a kid. I assume when you were a kid, it was just, hey, stay within yelling range and
yeah,
go
it's
play,
you're raised by a village. Get home before the streetlights come on.
Right.
That sort of deal.
So, and the assumption there is that, well, we lived in a safer time, but statistically, actually, it's way safer now than it was in the 80s when we were roaming the streets.
Yeah.
So I think that's another impact of screens being everywhere, is that we have so much news, and most of what we hear is bad. Our perception of how safe the world is and how the world's, doing, whether good or bad, we think it's way worse than it actually is. I hear about the world falling apart around us, but if I remove everything I hear on the news or my screens or Facebook, and I just analyze my life, I'm like, life's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
I don't know too many people are like, yeah, my life looks like, the constant, drama that I hear about in the news. I'm sure there's some people, whatever, but I think that twists our perspective, on what's going on in the world.
Right. And so, like, with kids, our kids' brains are, they're still developing, especially in like,
so.
exponentially, yeah, right? Exponentially between the 8 and 10. I mean, there's like the neurons that are being built are just like super highways exponentially. So I run into a lot of parents that, I would say they're hyper vigilant. They're like, no screens for my kids whatsoever. They're gonna, if they see any screens, they're gonna end up becoming a criminal, and then I have some parents who are like, yeah, they're very liberal, when it comes to screens, they're just like, yeah, whatever. If they, and that one that you came up with, that point that you made, I want my kids to have screens because, or phone because I want to be able to get a hold of them. I want them to be able to see, which is, I can say this on our podcast because I want to say, like, that's a dumb reason to give.
Well, it's just an excuse to basically, I'm making a lot of assumptions here about why parents, would do that.
No, but I think that excuse, like, you give if you want your kid to be able to get in contact with you, go buy them a dumb phone.
Sure.
Go buy them a flip phone.
Right.
Don't give them a supercomputer.
Right.
Don't.
They don't need internet access.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah. So it seems like there's overreactions in both regard, or maybe over and under reactions to this issue of screens. Like screens, would you say like screens are just kind of a part of everyday life now?
It is, but I also say, I'm also really critical of that because I like to think I'm pretty self-aware, and I know that the addictive and distracting nature they have on me, and I'm a fully developed, well, some may say not fully developed, but
you're right. We're right in the same ballpark.
My brain's probably not making a lot of new neural connections.
We're almost a real boy.
Right. And I feel the pull and the distraction, even though I very intentionally have gone through and shut off all my notifications, all my bells, all my dings. Like, I still feel it's been more than 5 minutes and I'm working on something. I need to check my phone. Well, why? Why do I do that? Well, because the phone's programmed me to do that.
Right.
And a kid, they don't have a chance. Because they've got no self-control, no or very little frontal cortex. Whatever the frontal cortex does.
Prefrontal cortex.
Yeah. Basically the ability to have self-control in any regard, or very little, and they can't think of consequences in the future. If you give them an option to eat chocolate bars for breakfast every morning, they would do that.
They'll do it.
And so it's our jobs as parents to protect them from that. And I think it's lazy to just say, well, to screens are just part of time, part of life nowadays. It's like, well, yeah, it is, but are we just going to do the easy thing and be like, here, go veg out on Netflix, screen, video game, because you'll leave me alone? Because I think that's a big part of why screens are so prevalent.
Exactly. And me being honest and transparent here, like, I went out and got my kids an iPad because I'm like, I want a break from you.
Yeah. Well, that's usually when I give in, even if we have, guidelines around it. I'm just like, I need to get 2 hours of something done. Jenny's working. Okay, fine.
A digital babysitter.
Go watch something.
Yeah, and that's a slippery slope. But so we did do an episode on moderation, right?
Yeah, we did. Was it last week? Week before?
A couple weeks.
Yeah. A couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So, and I think that this issue touches on that. So, like, there's obviously room for screens in a kid's life, but it has to be in moderation. So, like, I would tend to say that parenting has a larger impact on a child's life than whether they have screens in it or not. Like, you can have a lot of screens in your life and have excellent parenting and still turn out just fine.
Sure.
Or you can have no screens in your life and crappy parenting and turn out pretty bad.
Sure. When it comes down to it, a screen is just it's a tool. It's a device, and like anything, whether you're an adult or a kid, if you don't use it intentionally, it's going to shape you in its image, as opposed to us using it as a tool. Us designed in the image of God.
Yeah.
These devices are going to try to shape us in their image and manipulate us to use them, and be used by them. And that gets into social media and anything that you don't pay for. Like, the only way they can do that is by commoditizing you, and you are the product, and so that gets into a whole another
realm.
Yeah, realm. But I think you're right. If we're if we're being, and whether it's the 80s and before, and the big boogeyman was television,
right.
And then the 90s, video games, and like
right.
you buy a video game, you're gonna be a serial killer.
Right.
Statistics don't point that out to be true, even though I would argue it's probably not healthy.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I was going to make a really good point. It's going to be really, really amazing.
It'll come back around.
It'll come back. But I think at the end of the Yeah, I remember. Go ahead, say something.
Yeah. So I mean, I want to go to a place, you know, with parents right now that like screens aren't necessarily the enemy. You know, they can certainly be used for good, and they can certainly be used
I remember.
for bad. Oh, go for it.
It's about, and like you're saying, it's not the screens per se. It's the parenting. It's how involved the parents are, and I'd say whether it's televisions or video games or screens and apps and stuff these days, being intentional with what you let your kid and what you don't let them do, and then kind of like debriefing. You know, whether it's intentional, like in that moment, or just throughout your day. You know, like I try to do this with. Like movies we watch.
Yeah.
You know, obviously we're watching age-appropriate movies, but there's still messages in the movies. Some of those are congruent with the gospel, and a lot of them aren't. Mm-hmm. And so just kind of having conversations around, you know, hey, what do you think that movie's about? You know, what do you think this video game's about?
I like what you said. Debrief with them.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't do this as much as I should, because I mean, as I'm watching it, I'm picking apart like, is this consistent with you know, a biblical worldview, or is it not? Are they teaching, you know, some false gospel?
Right.
And I think it's important to have those conversations with our kids. Otherwise, they're just subconsciously picking up the culture, and that is the world they live in, as opposed to, you know, and not necessarily seeing or being pointed back to Jesus. You know?
And if you say nothing about maybe some of the cultural messages that you see, like debrief, like you said, if you don't debrief, then it could be received as, oh, it's fine.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, so a good example. So for me, a couple weeks ago, my daughter had iPad time, and the App Store was available. You know, I usually take the App Store off so they can't download apps.
Sure.
But it was up, and unbeknownst to me, she had downloaded TikTok and like created an account somehow.
How old is she?
10.
Oh, okay. I guess she wouldn't know how to do that. Yeah.
I guess. But
it's pretty easy.
It kind of caught me off guard a little bit.
Does she have an email? Don't you need an email to do it?
I think she used one of my emails. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, so in it, I was able to go back and look through her account and stuff like that, and she had some fairly benign stuff up. I mean, you know, what a 10-year-old would do, but what it provided for me, like, I shut it down. I was like, we're not doing TikTok, not right now, and let's talk about the desire of why you want to do TikTok, and let's talk about what social media is, and are you ready for social media, and let's talk about cognitive development and all that sort of, kind of like debrief what I would.
I hope you use those big clinical words.
I did.
Yeah, good.
I did. She fully got it and everything like that.
She was like, yes, Father. I fully agree.
Freud said that. Anyways, but it provided some, like, I could have handled it just like, this is probably one of my better parenting moments.
Nice.
But I could have handled it like, wow, you really messed up. Go to your room. You're going to lose privileges. You're grounded.
Sure.
But I was like, I don't think I should come down hard on her, because in some ways she didn't know, like, here's the darkness to social media.
Sure. You know, it's probably innocent to her to use as a teaching moment.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So I was like, okay, let's talk about it. Kind of like what you're saying, debrief. And I think so. It you know, I know that she felt a little bit of shame around it, and my intent was not to shame her in it, but it was to show the realities of, you know, social media. And so us, even as almost fully grown men,
our brains are almost developed.
That's right. You know, we still have to kind of work through some of the pitfalls of what social media is, and if you and I kind of, maybe me more so, have to work through it. I can only imagine, like, what a 10-year-old,
sure,
not a fully functioning, you know, mind and brain and stuff like that, is going to have to be thinking through, and they're going to be fairly influenced by that sort of stuff.
Right. Well, and that's a whole nother thing, because I mean, if we're just talking screens, that can be a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, if we're talking social media, I think that's a whole nother, much more dangerous sub-branch that I would encourage parents to wait until 15, 16, you know, because there's been a lot of, not just anecdotal, but actual, you know, studies that show like kids' brains just cannot handle that, and you know, I think Simon Sinek was talking about how, you know, the suicide rate of preteen girls is like off the charts.
Off the charts.
Right.
Off the charts.
Which before social media, like there wasn't a thing.
Nope.
Why would a preteen kill themselves?
Right.
You know, or even think about that, you know. And so, I mean, I can't think of any reason or justification that a parent, or specifically Christian parents, you know, would let their preteen or young teen, you know, on social media, no matter how much, you know, their friends talk about how cool it is.
Right. And so it's definitely hard to talk about, you know, screens without without implicating.
Right. It's almost ubiquitous.
Social,
like,
yeah.
That's what people mean by screen time.
Because almost
Right.
every app nowadays has a social media component to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So my daughters really love the online game. It's not even really a game; it's more of a community. But online game Roblox, and I don't get it. You know, I probably similar to how my parents didn't understand Mario back in like 1988.
Sure. Like I don't get TikTok.
Yeah, I still don't get TikTok.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out Instagram in some regards, but
Whatever, Mr. 44,000 followers.
I got that part figured out. But at any rate, they're really into this, you know, this game, and from a father's perspective, I want them to be able to enjoy stuff that they like,
Sure.
even if I don't necessarily understand it. But I also want to protect them
Yeah.
from things that they may not necessarily know fully or even understand.
Sure.
Like they're definitely approaching this screen and this game from a very innocent, everything's fine perspective.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, no, it's not.
Right.
And this is like, as kids, you don't know what you don't know.
Right. Is Roblox inherently social, or can you turn it off like you can with Minecraft, so that they're not able to engage with strangers online?
It's mostly social. It's mostly an online game, and so like we have to frequently have conversation where it's like, you know, you can't trust people online. You know, like and so they're diving into these concepts of like what is trust, and you know, there's been a number of times where they'll do these things in the game where they do trades of like animals, like fictional animals,
Yeah.
and they'll get scammed. You know, like
I think it's
somebody
scammed in the game.
somebody will like say like, hey, I'll give you this if you give me that, and so then my daughter will give whatever
Sure.
they, you know, because they're being honest, and the other person's like, you're not getting what I promised you, and so they get scammed.
Sure.
You know, and unfortunately, they're only being scammed out of something that's like, it's not even really exists.
Right. Which is hopefully the worst thing that they encounter on that here.
Right. But it's giving them kind of like a small real world example of like, well, people are liars.
Sure.
And
yeah, that's the example of the fall.
That's exactly right. And so I want to allow my daughters to enjoy things, but at the same time, I want to protect them from those things that they enjoy, because there are components of those things that people will exploit.
Sure. So are you having to have the conversation of, you know, why Susie 66 may not actually be a 12-year-old, but might be a 45-year-old dude?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. You know, I monitor very closely. Like, I really don't want you chatting with people. I really don't want you doing that at all, because you have no idea who's on the other end. On the other end, they're like, no, it's, you know, it's this 13-year-old girl. I'm like, you don't know that.
Sure.
You don't know that, and it's hard to have that conversation now, because again, they're so innocent, and I don't want to just squash that innocence.
Sure. You want to like give them. This is what it means to. This is what it looks like to be cynical by the time you're 11.
That's right. You know, smoking a pack of Camels, going, I remember when my dad told me the real deal about the internet. Gosh. Yeah, no, it's you know, these are the conversations when you're getting into screens, and then inevitably as they get older into social media.
Sure.
You know, so do you think, as we kind of wrap this up, do you think there's kind of a balanced response to screens and parents? Parents allowing kids with screens?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with obviously understanding your kids, what their propensities are, what their temptations are.
Ooh, I like that. So you got to know your kids.
You got to know your kids, which is where I think it all starts. You know, and then I don't know. I mean, I only have one kid, so I don't really have any like other personalities or experiences to bounce it off of. But I know for our son, you know, he's always trying to push the bounds, and so, you know, one of the things he loves the most is his, you know, Minecraft time, and so he'd rather do that than schoolwork or listen or sit at the table. And so we just, you know, so usually when we give it to him, you know, when he has to turn off, it doesn't end well. And so we're just like, nothing during the week. We've actually recently done, you know, you have to earn your time. So on the weekends, if you want Minecraft time, you've got to do some extra chores. if you do dishes, you get 15 minutes of Minecraft. Which, funny enough, he actually really enjoys doing dishes, so he's always asking us, "Can I do dishes?"
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're trying to kind of do that. So we're giving some, here's some responsibility for something he gets. Sometimes we'll do that for like schoolwork. He tends to not drag his feet to do a 5-minute exercise. Takes an hour if we can put some sort of carrot at the end of it.
Yeah.
But we don't always want to have to bribe him for him just to do his responsibility. So it's a fine line, and we're not super consistent. So we'll let you know once we master it. Yeah.
Well, I know that this is an ongoing topic, but I felt like it was a relevant one to chat through. I don't know that we, solved it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a little. I don't know about you, but in our house sometimes it's a little ridiculous when I'm like, if I had to count up like the mobile screens we have, I'm just like, what? I think it comes out to like 2 or 3 per person, maybe 4. Like it's kind of silly,
Yeah,
got old iPhones, old iPads, like I've got an extra.
Go play on the bathroom iPad.
Yeah, I've got an extra MacBook just sitting there, I don't use anymore.
That's the kitchen MacBook.
Right. So,
I think, I think if I can sum up what Christian and I are saying is, look, it's. When it comes to screens, it's more about the parenting than it is the screen itself. If you're worried about the screen doing a majority of the parenting, then that might say something about how you're approaching parenting. And so, if you're going to give your kid a screen, you got to be involved, especially, at the age that they're at. So if they're at 10 years old and you're giving your kid a screen, you gotta be involved. You can't just, sit back and go, well, I hope they kind of figure it out and navigate the internet all right, because they're not gonna.
Right. Yeah, and I would say, I mean, as a caveat to that, like, don't just give them free rein. Monitor what they're doing. Don't trust them. Kids are sneaky. And say, like, if they get a certain amount of time on a screen, be like, this is what you can do, specifically.
Yep.
And then make sure that they do that and they're not trying to sneak extra stuff.
And in the same breath, it's also important to allow kids, and this is where the balance comes in, and you got to know your kid, is you have to allow them, you got to give them opportunities to be trusted, Yep. And so if you're constantly hovering, you're constantly being kind of a helicopter parent,
sure.
It can impact negatively the relationship and their development. And so give them opportunities to be trusted, and screens can be one of those things. It doesn't have to be, like, if I don't monitor them all the time, they're going to end up becoming, a sexual deviant down the road or something like that.
Sure. I would just make sure it's a measured, a limited risk thing, not like, hey, we're just, no parental controls, we're going to trust them to get on the internet and be fine in their bedroom at night. Like, that's probably not a good example of trusting them, but maybe like, hey, we said that they could do this for a certain amount of time, we trust they're going to do it for that amount of time and then get off.
Right.
Where the risk of them disobeying is not going to end up them like seeing something they shouldn't see, online. Right.
And ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, God is in charge of your kids, our kids, and God knows exactly how they're going to develop, and so we're supposed to entrust our kids to them, and so Him. And so, if we're worried about, they've had too much screen time or they've gone kind of down a bad path, fortunately we have a good God that can and does oftentimes correct and reconcile all things to Him. And so we do have to put our trust in God as parents on all things. So with that being said, dads and moms, we love you. We care about you. We're praying for you. Check us out on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, and certainly on the Apple Store and wherever else this podcast is. Please leave us a review, as that helps get our stuff out there. And if there's a topic you'd love to hear us ramble on about and kind of give our expertise.
Yes, we will bloviate all day long. Just give us the topic.
Wow,
yeah, big word.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I was using big words, so I guess it was your turn. Yeah. But until next time, dads, moms, stay frosty.